Hello. Thanks for being with us. Today, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about a concept I call stepping over the line. Let me read something to you that may help to get the idea of what I'm referring to. It goes like this. It was one of those hot fall days. A bunch of kids were huddled together in a dusty schoolyard, watching two boys who faced each other. Buford Hayes, the taller of the two, stood with his hands at the side of his waist, his head cocked sideways in a haughty, condescending manner, looking down his nose at Jim Bricker, who was a head shorter and 20 pounds lighter. Buford had just drawn a line in the dirt as a way of informing little Jim that there was trouble afoot and that the challenge had been made. Buford was well known by the other kids as the school bully. His large size made it easy, but this was a new school year, and Buford was making sure everybody remembered that he was a number one around there. Jim Bricker looked down at the line and then back up at Buford. It wasn't the first time he'd been in this situation. The year before, Buford had drawn the line a couple of times, defying Jim to cross over it. Of course, all the kids knew what happened to anyone who crossed over the line. Buford had a reputation concerning those who had tried to stand up to him. But then, that was last year. This was the beginning of a new year, and Jim had learned a few things since the previous school term. One thing he had learned was that there were certain things that were right and certain things that were wrong, and he had developed a deep conviction for things which were right. He stood before Buford, weighing the odds, and as he did, something down inside of him said, "Stepping over the line is not so difficult to live with. What's harder is not stepping over the line and then having to live with that." With a determination that's rare, even in grown men, young Jim Bricker squared his shoulders and stepped forward over the line. There was a gasp from the crowd of kids, and they all looked at Buford's face to see his reaction. But there was something unusual on his face this time. Maybe it was that he was taken by surprise, or maybe there was a hint of unsureness. But whatever it was certainly clear that he had not expected Jim to step across that line. Uncertainly, Buford took a step backward and at the same time blurted out, "What do you think you're doing, kid?" Without hesitation, Jim replied in a clear, strong voice, "I'm stepping over the line, Buford. That's what I'm doing. And if you don't like it, then put 'em up. I'm not taking any more of your nonsense." Once again, there was a hesitation on Buford's part, and he took another step back. Jim quickly took a step toward him, and Buford backed up again. All of a sudden, the other kids caught on to what was happening, and they all began to yell taunting words at Buford, who was clearly acting cowardly instead of as the school bully. Now, I'm going to leave the story here, for we can all imagine how the situation might have ended, one way or another. But what we do know is that Buford had more reputation going for him than aptitude. Little Jim Bricker had brought that knowledge to light, just because he had been willing to step over the line. We all know that stepping over the line, whatever that line is in our current situation, can be kind of scary. We don't know what we might face. It might be victory, or it might be failure. And there can be a lot of pain associated with failure. But then, just like little Jim realized, there can also be a lot of pain associated with not stepping over the line. As Christians, we sometimes think that we stepped over the line when we gave our hearts to Jesus. But many times we are faced again with the challenge of stepping over the line in situations where Satan confronts us. That devil, just like Buford Hayes, has a reputation for beating up on anyone who goes against him. And many times Christians back off, more afraid of earth's bully than being committed to that which is right. And just what are we afraid of? When little Jim Bricker stepped across the line, he knew that he could be hurt very badly, and what would hurt him was Buford's fists. But when Christians fight against the devil, it isn't fists that make us fearful, but fiery darts, as referred to in Ephesians 6:16. If we were actually in danger of physical fiery darts, we would soon learn how to avoid them. But in the spiritual warfare that we fight, we don't fight against flesh and blood. But as 2 Corinthians 10:4 tells us, the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but they are mighty, even to the pulling down of strongholds. Not only do we not use the weapons of man against the evil, but the real danger to us is not from physical weapons either. The attacks against us are not with guns, knives, or spears. Satan's purpose isn't so much to destroy our physical bodies, but rather to destroy our spiritual relationship with Jesus. In short, he wants to destroy our faith in God, and he wants to destroy our soul. His weapons are those which hit at our faith and attempt to destroy our testimony of Jesus Christ. You see, we Christians are no longer children of the flesh, but are now born again spirit beings. Therefore, in order for Satan to be successful, he must destroy the spirit life within us. And quite frankly, if he can destroy our testimony, he has essentially destroyed us. Because of the way he attacks us, it's easy to get into situations where we are tempted to withhold our testimony of Jesus because someone might laugh at us or be upset at us for bringing up the subject of God or religion. Do you ever find yourself in a situation where you keep your mouth shut because of fear of rejection? Do you ever fall short of being the witness you should be? Well, maybe it doesn't happen to you, but I must admit that it happens to me. Someone says something and a door opens which will allow me to give some kind of witness to Jesus Christ, and then I hold back because of fear. I try not to hold back, but sometimes I walk away from a situation and think, well, I really missed the boat that time. I had the perfect opportunity and blew it. But you know, it isn't the incidental occurrences that will make the big difference when you stand before God at the great judgment day. It will be your overall testimony of Jesus Christ that will judge you, and if you are found to have been more fearful of people than of God himself, God will judge you as unworthy to be his bride for eternity. No, this doesn't mean you have to jump into everyone's face that comes along and be so pushy that you drive everyone away. That's not what I'm talking about. As Christians, we must choose our battles, and we have to know when it is better to fight and when it is better to use a little discretion and back off. But when you always seem to use that, quote, little bit of discretion, unquote, and you always back off, that isn't wisdom that is driving you, but fear of what everyone will think. Rejection is a very difficult thing to face, and it is one of Satan's most powerful weapons. No one likes to be rejected, and therefore we all try very hard to fit in wherever we go. This has some good points to it, but not when all we ever do is to try to keep from offending people. If we never offend anyone, then we also will never know what it's like to step over the line.